The Rushdoony family was a royal family in Armenia. There was an actual district of Armenia called the Rushdoony. And the Rushdoonies ruled that area. And when Christianity came in as well, the Rushdoony family decided to sponsor a priest in their family. So they became a political family and a religious family. In fact, I believe it was the 10th century, there were several Catholicoses of the Armenian Orthodox Church. It's the equivalent of the Armenian Pope. The Pope in the Armenian Church is the head of the Armenian Church, and they were Rushdoonies. And they ruled from the district of the Rushdoonies, Lake Octomar, the island of Octomar and Lake Van. So there's been these two trends, these historic roots in royalty and a ruling family, and then also the religious aspect from which my family came. The influences on my father are a little difficult to pinpoint because he came to his positions over a period of time, and because he read so voraciously. He read a tremendous amount from the time he was really a young boy, and he collected books, and they influenced him greatly. So he would often have a difficulty pinpointing those individuals who had influenced him most, because he would often agree with someone in some areas, but not necessarily in others. And some of the great influences on his life that helped crystallize his thinking came somewhat later in life, such as he was out of seminary. He was a missionary to American Indians in Nevada before he came into contact with Cornelius Van Til. A lot of people think he went to Westminster Seminary. He did not. He actually came out of a liberal seminary. He went to a liberal seminary self-consciously because it was honestly liberal, he said, and the Presbyterian seminary his denomination wanted him to go to, he felt was truly liberal. So he went to an honestly liberal one. And he later came across Cornelius Van Til because a pastor had given him a book that he said, "I'm probably not going to read it. I'm not interested in it. Go ahead and take it." And my father began reading it on the train on his way home. And it immediately struck him in terms of what he had learned earlier and been exposed to in the secular university. At the time it was called the Given. And he had a statist professor who told a student never to argue origins with Christians, because it was a self-defeating discussion, because evolution could only go back so far. And so he said, always take evolution as a given and argue in terms of it as the given. And so the idea of the given sort of stuck with my father, because he said he saw that that was important. And what was your given? Because it was essentially an item of faith. Cornelius Van Til came along and said he had a new term for the given, presupposition, and it was clearly in terms of the faith. It was a self-consciously Christian given, and it immediately resonated with my father. And he began a correspondence with Van Til that lasted throughout Dr. Van Til's life. The reaction of the left to Christian Reconstruction has been interesting. My father passed away in 2001, and many people said that's the end of the Christian Reconstruction movement, not really understanding its nature. But the reaction of the left was very different, particularly in the Bush administration, the second Bush administration. The left, as you recall, was very worried about this right-wing Republican movement. And they felt in those years that the Republicans were on a tremendous roll that seemed unstoppable. And they were trying to explain the reasons for this. And in looking at everything on the religious right, trying to figure out where it was coming from, they saw different ministries focused on individual things. Some were focused on education, some were focused on being against abortion, different aspects to the religious right, but they couldn't put it all together. They looked at my father and they saw this idea of Christian Reconstruction. They saw that it was all-encompassing and that he talked about an all-encompassing faith and a faith that involved every area of life. And they thought, well, there's the Grand Master who's manipulating everything in the religious right. And they developed this conspiracy theory of the religious right with my father as the grand puppet master, so to speak. And they went so far as to say that he had influence on, George Bush, even though he died in 2001, at the very beginning of the Bush years. And so it's interesting, though, that the left saw the consistency in Christian Reconstruction. They saw it as being all-encompassing, whereas other ideas only had a bit of the picture. So they were looking for what made sense. How can you put all Christian activity together? And they said the only thing that brings it all together in a grand purpose is Christian Reconstruction. So they misunderstood Christian Reconstruction as really controlling the religious right, when in reality, it was still trying to gain a voice in the religious right. There have been many people in the religious right who have been influenced by Christian Reconstruction, not too many wholly, but at least in part. Many have picked up my father's ideas, and the left has also been good at researching this and actually finding my father's words in other people. Sometimes even the left recognizes they don't credit Rushdoony, they don't quote Rushdoony. This has, again, caused the left to think that it's a conspiracy. They don't mention Rushdoony because they don't want to give out the source. But they saw the consistency and they saw the origins in my father. But it was bits and pieces. It wasn't controlling education, the family, and Christians acting independently of the government, which is what homeschooling was. It was Christian schooling, and then homeschooling was an attempt to basically take back an area by saying we're not going to compete with the government, we're not going to try to reform the government institution, because my father really wasn't too involved in politics because he didn't see politics as the means of victory. And he saw politics as more or less just a defensive battle, but the real efforts he felt had to be independent of politics to truly be effective in the long term.